Call the I'm gonna call the meeting to order. I have to read the executive order. That's what I'm doing, right?
Yep.
Executive order on remote participation. On Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act making appropriations for fiscal year 2023, which includes a 2-year extension of the option for public bodies to hold remote meetings by suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. That action was effective immediately, extending the current option for remote meetings through March 31st, 2025. So we will take a roll call. So, Dr. Childs.
Here. Take the next left onto Main Street, then turn left.
Mr. Redden.
Here.
Ms. Seal.
Here.
And Eric Beckman, I am here. Paul Connors will not be joining us. He called me a little while ago. So we will start the meeting. Let me just get my agenda here. All right. So we're here to talk about the fiscal 25 second supplemental budget and transfer requests. So, Mr. Director, we'll turn the floor over to you for a quick synopsis of what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to see you all. Mr. Reardon, former chairman, wonderful to see you. You're looking great on Zoom. This evening, we have a matter involving a modest supplemental, our second fiscal year 25. Before you is a spreadsheet that I've customarily prepared that shows a summary of the supplemental requests. The transfers are embedded in the transfer adjustment form, which is separate. By way of introduction, we started our fiscal year surplus with 3.4 million, which included a $2 million carryover of capital improvement money for the Dedham Superior Court. After backing that out and subsequently funding $192,778 in the September supplemental, we had a total of $484,000 before we started this evening's activities. This evening's activities regarding supplemental requests total $74,214. In the event the Finance Committee and subsequent advisory board agree to this request, we will be left with a balance of $410,488 to finish fiscal year 25. The first request we have is from the Wollaston Recreational Facility, $10,300. This is the offset cost of a Green Master piece of equipment. In FY25, there was a lease funded that totaled just under $10,000 for a lease that has expired. Separately on the transfer form is the request to move that $9,000 into the general fund. And then subsequently, we will need to supplement the new lease amount of $10,300. Bit of a wash, a little slight increase in the FY25 cost. The Registry of Deeds has requested, originally requested $105,000. That amount of money was modified down in half by the commissioners last week. So before you is the request the commissioners supported, totaling $52,500. That's $37,500 from printing, $7,500 for miscellaneous contractual services, $1,500 for stationery and office supplies, and $6,000 for miscellaneous supplies and materials. In this particular case, the registry had requested in writing that this item be funded through FY25 projected surplus dollars from the Registry of Deeds Excise Fund. The commissioners had extensive dialogue with the register about this. They had some reservations and decided, as I mentioned, to fund half of what the register had requested. So this item is funded separately from projected FY25 revenue. Under group insurance, our MedX plan and Freedom PPO costs have risen for calendar year 25. Modestly, as a result, we will need an additional $11,578.90. The Commissioner's Office is seeking several items, a couple of them from alternative revenue sources, including the first one, $172,000 to fund the architectural services of the HVAC upgrade at Dedham Superior Court. We're requesting this be funded from ARPA interest, which the board may recall had in excess of $3 million. The Dedham District Court architectural services, will be funded through the supplemental for $4,000. This was additional services as a result of this bid having to go out twice. The county endured a cyber attack in October. This evening, we are not here to discuss the details associated with that security event. I will make a general announcement in the advisory board as well, but in the event any community wishes to hear any details associated with the event, please contact me directly and I'll be happy to fill you in. We have given some updates to the commissioners as well as the school on the event. Financially, however, there is a cost. We are requesting that $18,336 be appropriated back into the emergency reserve to cover expenses that were fronted to deal with this cyber attack, and also to create a $30,000 insurance claim deductible, which is the maximum amount that the county is expected to expend against this event. Again, I'll be happy to explain details on the security event separately and privately, but financially, that is our request this evening. So succinctly, we're looking at $298,714.90 in supplemental needs, from which $172,000 will come from ARPA interest. $52,500 will come from dedicated deeds excise revenue in FY25 as proposed by the commissioners, resulting in a $74,214.90 draw from our FY25 surplus. On the back end for the Finance Committee's observation, we are tracking a deficiency, as I announced in September, in our employee health insurance fund. Currently, that amount is projected at $250,898. It is my hope that by the time we finish FY25, a good amount of this $410,000 balance will remain that we can use to wipe this liability off of our books before the close of FY25. And just a brief update on major large capital projects. As I mentioned, the Dedham Superior Court will be going through a large HVAC improvement funded through the County Capital Improvement Fund. Dedham District Court is an $800,000 HVAC upgrade funded through ARPA. The Wollaston Recreational Facility has tennis court improvements and ADA access, which will also be funded through ARPA, as well as HVAC upgrades at Brookline, Rentham, and Stoughton District Court, also funded through ARPA. Not shown here, but added to this bundle is a little over $338,000 for the school to upgrade the HVAC at Kemp Hall. 300, I think, 300 of that, was it 300 or 250 was funded from ARPA? I can't remember the
225.
220, and the balance from
And
the school.
113 from
The school. Thanks, John. And then finally, members of the Finance Committee, the county's FY23 audit is completed. It should be up on our website. If it's not, we will blame Bill Buckley. The FY24 audit will begin the second half of fiscal year 25. Regarding the transfers, very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I will go through them. If there's any questions from you or members of the advisory board later, we'll be happy to get into them. But the the transfers are largely in two different departments. The first is technology. IT is looking to move $28,000 to offset costs for equipment, technical and professional costs, service contracts, and computer supplies and computer software. When the cyber attack occurred, there were certain expenses that are not covered under our policy. The county has to pay for them. One of them is hardware. This cost $20,000, for example, pays for the new computers that we had to purchase as a result of that event. So they're using existing FY25 resources to resolve some challenges associated with that event. And additionally, the school is looking for a total transfer of six. Okay, we got a couple of transfers. The first is financial clerical services, $18,000 to fund financial contract services, $100,000 from professional salaries to district-wide other salaries. It looks like schools are doing some bookkeeping and cleanup. And then they have a large $612,000 transfer. They're pulling from maintenance trucks, HVAC controls, storefront replacements, and other items. Actually, it's going to those items. Is that correct, John?
It's capital, yeah, that's a capital.
The 612 is paying for the truck, the controls, and so forth, right?
Exactly. Those are all
The items it's
capital
going
items
to.
coming from
Thank you.
our surplus.
As well as a roof access ladder at McFarland. So that concludes the presentation of supplemental and transfer needs as proposed. The total amount as of now is $1,169,776.92. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions you or members of the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Any questions from the committee?
I have some significant questions, but maybe Barbara, we can go online first. If Barbara and Joe have questions.
Barbara or Joe, do either of you have any questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, Joe?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Tyler?
So my main question is why we would count our chickens before they're hatched, so to speak, and use FY 26 projected surplus to fund operating costs in FY 25. And,
this- Go ahead, I'm sorry.
and I really feel that that is a very bad practice. And I, with all due respect to the commissioners, I so appreciate you guys trying to figure out a way to do this. But I just think, especially given that we only have a $410,000 surplus, we're staring down another $250,000 cost. That would leave us with roughly $160,000 to get through the rest of the year with, for any unexpected costs. I just think digging into a potential surplus for next year is not really what we should do. I mean, I just don't really think we have the money to fund this $52,500 unless if there are absolute operational things that cannot be done because of this money, because they don't have this money, we could also fund it in the next quarter if we had to. But I think these are much tighter. If we're borrowing from next year's possible surplus, I think that's a big problem, actually.
I would agree. I mean, outside of the general supplemental, in general, I'm okay with.
Yeah.
The registry part of it is the only part, that's the part you're referring to.
Yeah, it's the part I'm referring to. Everything else
Um,
makes total sense to me. It's like, these are actual costs that
Yeah.
have to be met. We have to pay our bills. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But this feels to me very much like, well, as I said, it's counting our chickens before they're hatched.
Well, I think the couple things I want to say about this is that, number one is that, you know, when I understand that we adjusted the registry's budget towards the end of last year based on actual numbers that happened at the end of the close of the books. We reduced the budget overall by about $69,000. We all know that the registry was not happy with that decision, but that was what, under the law, that's what we do. I agree with you that to try to use funds that are not booked as surplus yet, a surplus is at the end of the fiscal year, not monthly. We don't book our surplus monthly. So let's just say, for argument's sake, tomorrow we get shut down by COVID again for the next 5 months. What happens then? There is no surplus. So counting on money that you haven't actually booked yet, I think is a bad decision. I would agree with you on that, bad budgetary decision. What I would suggest maybe to meet the needs without affecting the 2025, or I'm sorry, without affecting the future surplus numbers. In this budget adjustment, there is an amount of $93,346.02 coming from the deeds excise fund going to the general fund restricted account. That's actual excess surplus of last year. That's money that has already been certified as surplus money. So what I would suggest is we could potentially agree with the commissioners to transfer $52,500 from that line, leaving a balance of $40,846.02 to go to the general fund restricted. That would be one way of being able to satisfy this. Taking it from a future surplus, not only I think is bad business, but at the same time, in a way, it's sort of double dipping, because you're taking money that you haven't booked as a surplus yet, expending it, based on the fact that the registry's budget is based on 102.5% of expended funds, you would be in actuality, you would be inflating their expenditures for the prior year, which would figure into next year's budget allocation. So I think that that might be, I would agree that we should not, that we definitely shouldn't take it from that source. But what's your opinion of taking it from this excise, from last year's surplus?
Well, the only thing I would say is that we have been very clear that the deeds excise fund money needs to go back to the treasurer rather than to be, it's not a slush fund for us to use.
Right.
That's money that is incoming to the county and it belongs to the whole county. So I think there might be some legal issues around that, and that would be counter to what we've done in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, John.
The nuance, doctor, is the deeds excise surplus that Mr. Beckman's referring to is a surplus, and it is destined for the restricted revenue account that you're
Right.
referencing is
Yeah.
entangled in the
The
lawsuit.
Yeah,
So it has not yet arrived to that space. Effectively, it's a surplus of any other name. Your board, your committee can look at it as an extension of the restricted account. That's your view. Or you could see it as strictly the same kind of surplus fund that the commissioner envisioned drawing from FY25 to resolve the issue.
I don't know what other people think about whether or not that money, I mean, I guess the question is, should we, I guess, are we first viewing it as surplus, or are we first viewing it as
Restricted funds.
as the restricted
That's
funds as
yeah.
part of as part of our practice, you know,
Well, it's not restricted funds until it's transferred. So right now, it's still listed as surplus funds from 2024, from the prior fiscal year. Until it hits that restricted account, it's not considered restricted funds in my interpretation.
right, but we've been very clear that deeds excise fund money is
Yep.
not, it's county money.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's county.
it's a lens issue here. Yep,
Yeah,
that's what you're
It's
doing.
county money.
You know, the other thing also that I just want to bring up and kind of put on the record as well is that when we adjusted the 69,000 back in September, you know, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the register was asked where to take that money from and didn't give any guidance to this at all. So
Right.
we made a decision as a
Right.
board on where to take those funds from.
Yep.
Now, those funds need to be replaced. At the time, he had the opportunity, or the department had the opportunity. I guess the way I look at it is if any other department came to us and asked us the same request, would we be honoring it? And the answer to me would be no.
No,
So I guess the suggestion from the finance committee would be to not allow any transfer.
well, I think there's another bite at the apple in the next quarter.
Yeah, I mean, the
And-
question is, does it
And
need
there's
it
no
now?
reason, unless we're running out of funds in these accounts and we can't do operations, that's a different story. I mean, if the accounts are running out of money, that's a whole different story, but we also know that the register could make or transfer requests from other funds into these funds if he had to keep operations running.
Yeah, I mean, there's other.
There's a
other
way to do
places.
that.
I had asked John and Phil and Bill to pull the balances in the 4 accounts that he's
Mhm.
talking about today,
Mhm.
just to see. And what I noticed is that there's no pending invoices. There is encumbrances
Mhm.
that bring the balances down a little lower. However, the other lines, the other expense lines that he has within his budget could cover any kind, I mean, we're not talking about huge amounts of money here. If we needed to cover it through a different line and then come back in the next supplemental and say, and you know, to your point, the 250,000 that we know that we have an issue, potential issue for the medical and life, you know, we've got some expenditures coming up and we're running pretty thin.
Yeah.
So, you know, definitely, I mean, definitely like borrowing from the future year is out. So I guess the question is, do we
I can't
just,
vote to support that.
so, Mr. Reardon and Ms. Seal, do you have any opinion on this issue?
What are your thoughts?
If the registrar has other funds that he could tap temporarily, I would suggest he tap them. I mean, because to your point, I mean, there's a $37,000 here, but the others are small dollars. So and we can relook at this, the next quarter.
Yeah.
Very true. Mr. Reardon, do you have any comment on this?
No, I agree. There's a history of the register going into other accounts in order to satisfy needs. So I would imagine that could be done in this particular case.
So what we would be talking about then would be eliminating the $52,500 offset with the 4 items requested,
Yeah.
which would bring the total from $1,169,776.92 down to $1,117,276.92. So are we in agreement that the recommendation from the Finance Committee will be to not fund the registry's request until next supplemental?
I think and we can be very clear that if the register is running the difficulties with funding in any of these accounts, he can, there's a process by which he can ask for a transfer from account to account that's workable. And
And I think it's
And
safe
we're-
to say that he understands it.
yeah, and we're welcome to have him come back
Yep.
in the next for the next quarter if it's really dire. And we might know by then, would we know by then, John, about the 250? Will we know by then?
Regarding,
The 250,000 liability we probably have?
We're carrying it, so it's a no number. It won't change.
It won't change, but we'll know if we have other pressures on that 160,000 left, we'll know.
Yep.
We'll have a much better picture if we're like scrambling to,
You have to get through a winter.
yeah, we have to get through a winter, we have
Yeah,
to keep the
exactly.
roofs from leaking, it's like, 160,000 goes like that when you've got major stuff, so a boiler goes, I don't know, it's just crazy.
okay, so do somebody want to make a motion to amend the second budget adjustment?
I'll make that motion to amend the second budget to, all right, to $1,117,276.92 by eliminating the commissioner's proposed $52,500 funding for the Registry of Deeds.
Got a motion?
Second,
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Mr. Reardon,
aye.
Ms. Seal,
Aye.
Dr. Childs,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So we will recommend to the full board to make an adjustment on the second budgetary supplemental. Okay, the other item we have on our agenda is the minutes from the open session meeting of September 18th. Does anybody have any questions about the minutes?
No, motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Mr. Reardon,
Aye.
Ms. Seal,
Aye.
Dr. Childs,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So I don't think we have any emergency items. Does anybody have anything else that needs to be discussed for the finance committee? Mr. Cronin?
Just briefly for the committee's information only, and I'll make this remark at the advisory board as well. The county's ARPA program phase regarding distribution of funds to communities is coming to a close at the end of this month. I'm happy to report that all allocated funds are making their way to every community as designed and as designed by the Norfolk County Commissioners. I don't have a presentation, it's not on your agenda to engage in any questions or answers, but it's an announcement that I think each of you should be informed about. And again, if you have any questions about your community's ARPA program, call me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? I will take a motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Mr. Reardon,
Aye.
Ms. Seal,
Aye.
Dr. Childs,
Aye.
the chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone. We will go on to the full NCAB board meeting.
Okay. We have an executive, we have to read the executive order on remote participation since this is a hybrid meeting. On Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act making appropriations for fiscal year 2023, which includes a 2-year extension of the option for public bodies to hold remote meetings by suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 38, section 20. That action was effective immediately, extending the current option for remote meetings through March 31st, 2025. Now, before we get started, before we call the roll, could we do the pledge? Mr. Dumas, welcome to us from Foxborough. Paul, we're happy to have you back. Will you lead us?
I'd be happy to.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a formal welcome to you. We're glad to have you back.
Happy to be here.
Okay. Barbara, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Avon,
Here.
Bellingham,
Present.
Braintree, Brookline,
Here.
Canton, Cohasset, Dedham,
Here.
Dover, Foxborough,
Here.
Franklin,
Here, remote tonight.
Holbrook, Medfield,
Present. Remote.
Medway, Millis, Milton,
Here,
Needham, Norfolk, Norwood, Plainville,
Here.
Quincy,
Here.
Randolph, Sharon,
Here.
Stoughton,
Here.
Walpole,
Here.
Wellesley is present, Westwood,
Here, remote.
Weymouth, and Rentham.
Present. Remote.
65.45.
We have a quorum, 65.45%. Thank you very much, Barbara. Okay, number 3 is executive session. I see no need to have an executive session. So I think we can pass on that unless there's something I'm not aware of. Okay. Number 4 is our FY25 second supplemental budget and transfer request. And I'm going to turn it over to the county director to walk us through this.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members of the advisory board, and happy holidays to all of you. This evening, the county presents to you a supplemental transfer request that has been voted upon by the commissioners as of last week. In summary, as the material in front of you shows, and as Mr. Buckley will produce on the Zoom, recall that we began the year with a $3.407 million surplus. That was inclusive of a $2 million transfer of capital improvement fund monies that were intended for the Dedham Superior Court that has been reallocated in your September meeting to that purpose. After our work was completed in September, we spent $192,778. It left a balance of $484,000. This evening, we are asking to draw from that $74,214.90. From the supplemental supplemental standpoint, the county requests the following items. The first is a $10,300 piece of equipment under lease. It is a Green Master turf mobile. It is previously a lease under the FY24 budget that is being transferred to a new upgraded lease cost. In effect, the FY24 value is being transferred on the form and on the sheet that is separate. And this cost is a new item that offsets it. It is not quite a wash. It's a couple $100 more than the old one. The Register of Deeds has requested originally $105,000 in printing, miscellaneous contractual services, stationery and office supplies, miscellaneous supplies and materials. The commissioners considered this request and cut it in half. This particular presentation now is $52,500, $37,500 for the printing, $7,500 for miscellaneous contractual services, $1,500 for stationery and office supplies, and $6,000 for miscellaneous supplies and materials. This item was voted upon by the commissioners last week. The unique difference on this particular item, as you may know, the Register has requested it to be funded from FY 25 projected dedicated deeds excise revenue surplus. That's the only change. That's an important distinction. It's based on projected revenue surplus. We'll get to the transfers for information technology and the agricultural high school in just a moment. The next item is group insurance item. MedX Plus and Freedom PPO costs have increased for calendar year 25. As a result, there is a need to supplement that line by $11,578, excuse me, and 90 cents. Within the Commissioner's office, there are several items. The first is for the Dedham Superior Court Architectural Services or HVAC upgrade. We're requesting $172,000 to come from ARPA interest. I would like to remind the advisory board that our goal when it comes to any work associated with courts is to align those expenses as fully reimbursable by the state under our court rental agreement. Consequently, ARPA interest is eligible, as well as the capital improvement work that is planned with the $2 million. Over a period of time, once this project gets going, we expect all these monies to come back and redistribute back into the capital improvement fund for perpetual use in care of the properties. The Dedham District Court was a building management system project funded by ARPA. It went out to bid with no results. It has recently been rebid, and as a result of the second effort, our architects had to put more work into redesigning the bid package that cost $4,000. We're requesting that to come from this supplemental. We have, excuse me, the county was a victim of a cyber attack on October 27th. This evening, I'm not here to discuss the particulars of that event. As I mentioned in the Finance Committee meeting, if any member of the advisory board or their town manager or officials thereof wish to discuss the cyber attack details with me separately, I'll be happy to do so. It's not an item on the agenda, it's a security related item. So we kind of want to keep it under wraps, but we are here to share our experience and our thoughts on the process. Overall, things worked out, but there's a cost to it. This evening, we're looking to replenish our emergency reserve account by $18,336 and bring that back up to $50,000, which is where it needs to be. And also create an insurance claim deductible, which represents the maximum amount the county will be obligated to spend against eligible costs associated with the cyber attack. To date, we've seen a couple of invoices come in from the security expert we have been working with. Those would be booked against the deductible. So in total, we are requesting $298,714.90 in total supplemental items. $172,000 even would come from ARPA interest. $52,500 would come from the projected FY 25 dedicated deeds excise fund, which results in a $74,214.90 draw. It will leave the county with $410,488.12 in our supplemental reserve this fiscal year. You turn the page on this report, Bill, if you could just bring it down in a second. One of the reasons I want to keep our powder dry, I announced to this board back in September, we're tracking a large unfunded liability associated with our employee health insurance fund. I'm hoping by the end of fiscal year 25 to use $250,898 of this balance to clean that obligation away. Also wish to announce that the county is embarking on several large capital projects. I mentioned the Dedham Superior Court. That project has not gone out to bid yet. With the approval of the funding this evening, we'll begin the process of getting the bid package ready. I do expect it to be awarded in early 2025 and the work to begin in 2025. We'll report back to this board sometime in spring on what the projected timeline for that project is. It's an impactful and very meaningful project for our most respected Superior Court. It will add a lot of fresh outside air, which is desperately needed in that old building. The Dedham District Court funded project from ARPA will produce a building management system. For those who are in the space who understand building management systems, this is the county's first foray into this world where we will utilize in Dedham District Court as a pilot, the ability to technologically monitor the heartbeat of a building. And that's its heating, ventilation, air conditioning, security, and a number of other diagnostic tools to be able to make each system run efficiently, to produce savings. These BMS systems are quite commonplace in large-scale facility operations. Once we learn this system and engage, we'll be looking to expand it because what we're looking to buy is a scalable product that can be applied to the other county facilities down the road. In addition, the Wallaston Recreational Facility needs tennis court upgrades and HDA upgrade pieces for access. That particular project came in yesterday, slightly under projected cost. We're still evaluating the bidders, but that is also funded by ARPA. And then finally, we have upgrades for other HVAC projects in Brookline, Rentham, and Stoughton District Court, all funded by the American Rescue Plan Act tranche associated with the county. Finally, the county has completed its FY23 audit. The FY24 audit will begin early 2025. The audit and its management letter will be up on our website shortly. There are no new findings associated with it. It's pretty much the same product that was delivered for the FY22 FY22 audit that you saw in September. Any questions on the audit? Be happy to answer them as well. In total, before you is a request that includes these supplemental items and the following transfer items. Under technology, we're looking to move $28,000 out of temp salaries to offset and $10,000 out of miscellaneous equipment to offset $6,000 in professional and technical expenses, $4,000 education of employees and training, $20,000 for computer supplies, and $8,000 for software. What our CIO is asking for is some flexibility to move these monies within his budget to offset the majority of this is cyber attack related expenses not covered under our policy. The biggest one is computers. You may or may not realize, but when you are attacked, most insurance companies will not award any funds for computer replacement because the attack is on the software. The presumption is the computer works as soon as you replace your software. So we took the step of building in new software, we're going to the cloud, and new hardware. We bought 20 new computers. So he's looking for the resources to offset those expenses within his existing appropriation. Also, the Norfolk County Agricultural High School has several transfers. I know Mr. Wallace is here. If you have any questions specifically about this, $18,000 to offset business and financial contract services, $100,000 for district-wide salaries for temps, and then $612,000 to be sprinkled into a number of different capital items, including a new maintenance truck for the farm, Kemp Hall HVAC control upgrades, admin building HVAC controls, $41,000 for a storefront replacement, $8,000 for the building chimney removal, $10,000 for the McFarland building electrical panel cleanup, and then finally $30,000 for the McFarland roof access ladders. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation request on behalf of the County Commissioners for the FY25 second supplemental transfer. I'm happy to answer any questions you or the members may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for County Director Cronin? Please.
You had mentioned, I mean, this sheet here showed you were gonna be funding the venture deeds. As last week I saw the letter, he was giving me funded half the money, 52,000, whatever it was, okay? Now, tonight you took it away. Am I correct?
I think Mr.
I'm gonna have Mr. Beckerman do
yeah.
his report on the Finance Committee in just a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I defer to the chair on that.
I'm gonna take the report then.
Yeah. So shall we go to that first before we do questions? Let's do that. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just have one question, Madam Chair, maybe it's a question that could be directed to Mr. Wallace. On the transfer that you're taking $100,000 from teacher salaries to a temporary line. Is that something where we have a teacher going out on leave, so you're funding long-term substitution or?
It's a, I guess I can answer that question, right?
Of course.
It's a form of that. We have a teacher that retired at the beginning of the year who was in our budget for this year. We decided not to replace that teacher based on the staffing in that particular department. It was environmental science and we didn't have a need for that teacher. But we traditionally have exceeded our temporary budget for temps for the school. And I found that the budget was probably too low for this year. So I just transferred all of the salary savings that were because of that teacher wasn't replaced, transfer that over to the temporary line to give myself flexibility going forward. But it's not a direct replacement of temporaries for a person that's out on leave.
So the budget that was presented and approved in that particular, I'm gonna call it department, has one less FTE than.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Beckerman, why don't you explain the report on the finance committee?
So the finance committee met tonight, and the final decision, I guess I'll say, would be to support the second budget amendment in its entirety, with the exception of the request from the registry. The reason for that is the 52,000 that's being requested is being requested through future surplus money. Surplus is not surplus until it's certified at the end of the year. We don't do a monthly surplus. So for the registrar to try to make a case that we have extra money that we can use to fund any kind of request, modest or not, to me is irresponsible. It's not actual surplus fund yet. Let's just say, for argument's sake, next week we get shut down by COVID and we're shut down for 4 or 5 months. That surplus doesn't become surplus anymore. At the end of the year, it's zero, or even in deficit. As much as there is a sense of trust that there will be surplus, it's not good, in my opinion, and in the finance committee's opinion, it's not good financial management to use surplus funds that are not certified surplus yet. So the finance committee decided to, again, to approve the second budget amendment adjustment in its entirety, but reduce the 52,000. So instead of the 1,169,776.92 that was being presented, we've approved 1,117,276.92. The one part that was not, did we talk about the 93,000 as part of this? No? Okay, there is a $93,346.02 being transferred from the deeds excise fund, which is actual 2024 surplus money going to the general fund restricted account. As everybody is aware, this falls into the same category as the $4 million that is currently under litigation. We don't want to touch that money. We want that money to go into the restricted account, as we've been doing, as the practice has been for the last couple of years. So that's the recommendation of the Finance Committee, Madam Chairman, is to approve the second supplemental in its entirety, with the exception of the 52,000 and the associated lines, 4 lines for the printing, miscellaneous contractual services, stationery office supplies, and miscellaneous office supplies.
I might add, in the conversation that in our finance committee meetings, there were a couple of things that were brought up. One, the county is only looking at a potential surplus of $160,000 at this point in the year, given the $250,000 liability that we have. And so that is not a lot of money for us to manage the last 6 months. And the treasurer, the register does have enough money in his accounts to cover these expenses, even if it would require him to make a request for a transfer from one line item to another line item. And there would be an opportunity at our next meeting for the last quarter, when we will know much better. We will have gotten through the winter. We will know much better what the county's expenses are against that $160,000 surplus. And if the treasurer is up against it, the register is up against it with any of his operations, there would be, we could then do a supplemental to fill his accounts if he needs that. So it's not like there's not another bite at the apple. There's absolutely another bite at the apple once the total picture of the county budget is clearer. And the other thing is that this would be funding something out of projected surplus, not actual surplus, just a projection of a surplus. So that was the other issue that came up.
One thing I just want to add to that as well is that, you know, if we were to, I guess the question would be, if any other department came to us and said, I look like I'm going to have a surplus and I want to use it now, would we let them? And the answer would probably be no. Based on the fact that the registry's allocation is 102.5% of prior year expenditures, if we were to allow a department to use future surplus money that hasn't been certified surplus yet, their next year's allocation would also be increased by that amount, but that amount would go into their expenditures, which means next year's allocation would be, I guess you'd say, unduly inflated on top of the potential of the surplus being less. Just wanted to throw that out there.
And it's not like the operations wouldn't continue to exist if we don't do this tonight, because we'll have another chance if the operations are impacted. Because we don't, obviously, we want to pay our bills. We have to pay our bills.
I have a
So,
question.
yeah, Commissioner, yes, please.
To you or to Eric, whoever's appropriate there. So I know in the local level, when you need your funds certified as free cash, there's a process. We know that, we're all familiar with that. And sometimes it takes a year and then you get it certified. What you're saying is you don't want to allow the registry or any department to assume there's a surplus until the money is certified. How can that money be certified then until the close of books on July 1?
That's exactly the point.
But you just said, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I could just say, we'll take another visit, you know, when we come back in 3 months. What's the point? We're not gonna close the books until June 30.
Because we wouldn't.
We just need to finish. So are we gonna actually certify funds in the next 3 months, or we have to wait until June 30 to close the books?
No, what we would be saying is that if we're back in 3 months and the money is needed, the money could be transferred from another expense line within the registry. I still wouldn't support taking money from, that's not certified, because like you said, on the local level, it's a free cash process where it goes to DOR, it gets certified and everything else. On the county level, it's not, it isn't, it's just surplus money, but it's not surplus until the books are closed at the end of the year.
So you would be open if the need arises to allow a transfer from another one?
Absolutely.
But not anything in terms of so-called surplus?
Absolutely, yep.
I want to make sure we're clear on that. Thank you.
And remember, if the registry really needed money, and we had $160,000 left in our budget, it would be county surplus that could be allocated to cover those expenses. So it's not that, but it would be out of our current surplus dollars, certified surplus dollars, not money that hadn't yet been certified. Yeah.
And the other thing also to think about is the 93,000 that's listed in here, that is actually last year's surplus money. If we weren't in the middle of the litigation issue we have right now, that money could be used by the registry. We can't use it. We have to move it into restricted funds because of the position we're all under right now as well.
Hey, one second.
There's multiple things.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
really good.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Polito,
I understand your logic, and I'm not arguing the logic. If you don't spend free cash, you don't have. That's what,
That's
you want to
the
spend free cash, you don't have now, I'm
That's the
kind of
logic.
giving it to it. I didn't know that how it's happening, I'm saying when you asked me the
Yeah.
first question.
yeah, that was a good question.
And I completely agree with it, you don't spend money you don't have yet. I mean, what happens if you said it falls out, you only made 93,000 last year, and you wanted 100 something, then you want 100 something, you want to use all that money, more than that money, if it just, how I read it earlier. But you said there's money in those accounts now, and like printing is it's a big money, that's $37,000. Does he have a lot of money in printing now in that line item?
That's a good question, Mr. Polito, and Mr. Beckerman did ask for those dollars, and so we can tell you that, because that's a great question.
I asked today for the accounting office to pull the balances in the 4 accounts that the register is asking for. There are no pending invoices to any of these accounts. There are encumbrances. The original budget for printing and binary service was $100,560.82. Year-to-date transactions are $79,000. Right now, they're showing an uncommitted balance of $7,680.82. There is an encumbrance of $13,000. I don't know exactly what those encumbrances are for. Miscellaneous contractual, $36,000 was the original budget. Year-to-date transactions, $22,000. Stationary office supplies, $13,000, year-to-date, $91.50. And miscellaneous supplies, $6,500. That one's getting pretty close to it, $64.84. But again, these are expense lines that can be used from other expense lines. If one of these expense lines gets exhausted, the register does have the ability to go to the accounting office and ask for money to be transferred from a different expense line to
Does that
cover
have to
those
come back
balances.
to the advisory board or just
No.
to the commissioners?
That's something, that he has
It depends on where
discretionary.
that source would come
Yeah.
from.
If it stays within the same group, that he has the
Well,
discretionary.
it's not, see, I don't know the groups, I'm saying, it could be anywhere in his budget, salaries are not being used, can you move salary money to that? I don't.
No,
I don't know
can't
how
be
it-
salary.
Group one is salary, group five is capital. Those have to be approved by you.
Okay, and the other groups, you know, he can do with himself without going to commissioners, I'm just asking, I don't know how it works, that's what I'm saying.
Correct. Within the
Yes.
group, he may ask for transfer administratively. Outside the group, between 2, 3, 3, 4, those approved by the commissioners. Is that correct, Phil?
And the register has done this in the past. I think that also came up in our FinCom discussion, that the register has had to move money from one account line item to another line item, and has been able to do that without difficulty.
And you had mentioned that you have 116,000 left, 163,000 left this year
60,000,
in all county money?
that's it.
Total county.
So
what,
what kind of
what that is, it's taking, if you can see on that spreadsheet, Mr. Polito, it's 410,488. And what Dr. Childs is saying is if we decided to move today, the $250,000 health insurance liability cost, it leaves 160,000. That's where that number comes from.
For the rest of the fiscal
We're not
year.
moving that until the end of the year.
250 liability is for what?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
250,000 is for what?
So if you go to the back
Well, I got
page,
so many pages here, I'm trying to find out which one I'm on, that's what I'm saying, so I don't know which, I printed out, I printed a bunch of pages, but I'm not, I had the right one.
the county, as I mentioned in September, the county is tracking a deficiency on our employee health insurance
Oh,
fund.
point, health, oh, okay, health insurance, okay.
And I asked that question too, Mr. Polito, I think it's a good one. That's a fixed number, County Director.
It's fluctuating a little bit with interest, but yeah, generally it's 250,000.
Now, the reason why it's high, did we not budget enough, or we new employees coming in,
Yeah, I explained that back in September. There was a series of
I wasn't at
deposits.
that meeting, so I wasn't there.
That's fine, it's a good question. It was a series of deposits that were not made into the proper account in prior years. In other words, the dollars were deposited by the treasurer's office into non-health insurance funds, and those funds reverted. They became surpluses in prior years. So the liability grew. Consequently, we are where we are because we didn't put the money in the right account. So this will catch us up and clean that up.
And the other thing is on this, just a question on cyber, did it hit all Nova County, even schools too? I just,
Did what hit it?
the cyber attack, was it all Nova County or just certain department? You don't have to answer what department, I just wanted, did it hit the whole county?
No.
No, it didn't.
It was isolated.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know. Okay.
I'll be happy to talk to you offline.
Yeah, I just don't know, it was the whole county get hit. Okay.
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
It's good. Other questions?
I do, Madam Chairman.
Hi, Peter, how are you? Will you, please?
Very good. Sorry, I was running late and I didn't want to come late to the meeting, so I figured I'd just Zoom from the office. So I have two questions. One, is it my understanding that the county commissioners voted in favor of this reduced number, not the zero number, but the reduced number? And if it wasn't going to come from these projections, could it come from someplace else?
Yes, it is. The commissioner's recommendation was that it would be funded. I wonder if I should turn it over to the commissioners to explain.
Well,
Or John, I think we'll have our county director explain that vote, and yes, we are not agreeing with the commissioners on this, Peter, you're right. But John will explain why.
the commissioners decided to compromise on this matter, Mr. Padula, recognizing that it was speculative, but based on revenues collected through November, the revenue shows a modest surplus against the deeds excise portion that funds the registry of deeds. In effect, that surplus is very near what the register fully requested, and the commissioners decided to reduce the risk of that by going halfway, and that's exactly what it was. It was a compromise against what the register requested. They expressed similar concerns that this body is discussing this evening relative to the speculative nature of it. And they also wanted to make it very clear, as they did in their motion, and as Mr. Beckerman just alluded, that funding a $52,500 item would be above the mandate of 102.5%, and that this would be effectively an addition or above benchmark associated with that law. So they very much had their eyes open on the vote, and it was, I guess you could best characterize it as a compromise at the time. Thank you.
Is there any other, through the chair, if I could, is there any other place that the money could come from if it was not going to come from these, this potentially speculative funds?
Yeah, I think it's fair that the county has, as I present to you tonight, a surplus that after this evening's vote of 74,214 will result in a surplus of $410,000, Peter. That's one place. And the other place is to, as Mr. President alluded, there's an FY '24 surplus of $93,000 that if this board had a lens and it wanted to review using that money, notwithstanding the pending litigation, that's another avenue. But you have choices to make against each of those decisions. But to answer your question, those are the only areas I would recommend you draw from. With risk.
Thank you. Based on the fact that the commissioners are making a recommendation, I'd be in favor of that. So any change I will not be in favor of, but thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Mr. Polito.
What is the reason why the finance committee didn't want to use the 400,000, take the 152,000 out of the four something? What was the reason behind that? Yeah, I just think you can't do it the other way because I don't think it's fiscally responsible. But the four something is responsible, and if he doesn't need the other half, then tell me he might not get the other half. At least he'll move that with the budget later in the year.
Yeah, and I appreciate,
something to think about.
I appreciate the comment, Mr. Polito. I think the thinking behind it is that, this is the money that we have for the rest of this fiscal year for the county. So if you take the 410,000 and drop the 250,000 in the medical, the medical and life issue off, you're down to about $170,000 to run the county for the rest of the year. And if any more, and we all know there's going to be a third, possibly a fourth supplemental, we're leaving ourselves really short if we take any more money out of there. So we're trying to manage these funds in the best way possible to not leave us short, because if this surplus goes down to zero, then what do we do? We have no means of funding anything that comes up in the next 6 months, and we haven't even started the winter yet. So that's the thinking behind it.
Ms. Polito, go ahead.
You said you have four something right now. Is that four something minus the 250?
That's before we take away the 250, 410, then we have to take the 250 out of that. We know that's what we have to take.
Plus the 74,000 we're talking
I just
about.
think if the paperwork looking at wise,
Right.
the 250 should have come out right away. Look at it. So yeah, we only look at 250 to spend,
Right.
not the 40. You see, look at it. 4,000 is a lot of money. What's 52,000 of the 450?
We don't want to spend that 250 until we absolutely have to. It's like paying your bill on the
But
red
he's
day.
put it aside, so you mentally you're not going to touch that.
We're not gonna, we can't touch that money.
But
It's in
on paper, it's been an argument on paper, they don't get 250 that, but for something, it's tough to argue that you can't support $50,000.
Right, but we're seeing the whole picture
Right.
as the advisory board. We see the whole picture, which is the 410. But we know that 250 liability is sitting right there. It's even though we haven't taken it out of our account yet, which leaves us 160,000 in our account, our surplus free cash, the equivalent free cash account, to run the rest of the county for any department request for an overage or problem. And that's why it seemed a little reckless to take out 52,000 now, when the register could come back in our next quarter, when we will know much better how that 160,000 is going to have to be divided up.
Plus, there could be other expense lines that the register could draw from, that he would need the money from the county right now. So I don't believe it's a dire need at this point.
When you said it's about 102% of last year's appropriation, that
No.
what you said?
102.5% of last year's expenditures. That's what the law says that his appropriation is.
Okay.
So if we allow him to spend more than what if we
The bottom line
allocate
goes
more
up,
money to him,
that goes
he's
up.
gonna get more money next year,
But-
which would not, it would be
Right.
the equivalent of double dipping, I
Okay,
guess
so
is the way you could.
That would include built-in pay raises for the employees and the expenses for next year. So you give an employee 3% pay raise, so he's not cutting back 100%. That'll be, the expense for pay raise will already be in that money. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, it would mean that when during
At
the
least
budget
102%,
time.
at least 102%.
Yeah, during the budget time, so he gets 102.5% of his
What he spent
expenditures.
last year.
If he needs money to bolster a salary line or anything, then that's where we come in doing the budget process next year to see where we can get that money within that budget in order to make that money.
Okay, other questions or comments? Hi, Gus from Medfield.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out mechanics here. And all I want to talk about as an example, and it's probably the biggest one, is the printing request the register had. I read his letter, and got confused when he talked about the fact, as I'm sure the commissioners are aware, the budget line item for printing was reduced by over $30,000. What I'm trying to is the register the one who, if the overall budget for the register went up 2.5%, and he's claiming that the printing budget went down by $30,000. When I read it, I said, well, something else must have gone up by more than 2.5%. Is he the one who establishes original budgets in these different categories? Because we're only looking at certain categories. We're not, I think your point is you don't want to go more than the 2.5% increase on the overall budget. And I'm trying to understand his information in that letter when he says something's cut. It doesn't make sense to me. Why isn't that up 2.5% unless somebody allocated it differently?
I'm gonna ask.
So I can answer that question,
Okay.
if that's
Go ahead.
okay.
Fine.
So last year, as you know, we allocated his funds the way we're supposed to under law, 102.5% of prior year expenditures.
Mhm.
The books weren't closed yet though, because obviously we do the budget prior to the end of fiscal year. When the fiscal year budget closed, the amount of expenditures was actually less than what we had originally budgeted.
Mhm.
So in September, we actually reduced his budget by about $62,000. Now, at the time, the register was asked where he wants that money to come from and refused to work with the county to tell us where he wanted the money to come from. So basically, the county made the decision for him. And part of that was money coming out of his printing expenses. We tried to take it out of places that it would look like he had enough money to go for the year. That's the reason why he's saying, on one side, the budget was cut. He's right, the budget was cut based on the Mass General Law.
So that explains the second part of the cut that he mentions. He says that an additional $26,193 per Director Cronin's recommendation, that's the part that's the reduction from what the projection was to what the actual expenditures were. He's claiming another $30,000 was taken out of printing before that. And my question really is, well, how did that happen? Because if he set up his own budgets, what I'm getting at is we're looking at specific budget lines that need more funding. And I'm saying, but wait a minute, if your budget went up 2.5% and you have a problem with your printing, which you're claiming was cut by 30,000, but I'm not sure what number he's measuring that from, we're kind of like getting forced to look at incremental needs in specific budget lines. I'm actually reinforcing the point that said he should be transferring stuff in, but I'm asking the preceding question, which is who set these up in the first place to be this reduced budget? I would assume it'd be the register setting up his own budgets the way he wanted it for the next fiscal year.
Mr. Cronin, would you like to address that?
With regard, yes, Madam Chair, with regard to who sets up the accounts, this board sets up the accounts based on the recommendations of the county commissioners.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't, all right. I guess I'm reacting to the fact we're spending a lot of time talking about this, but it's only looking at a certain piece of the budget. It's not looking at the total budget. At the end of the day, I'm agreeing with what you said. You don't want to change you don't want to do something that changes the 2.5%. I get it. I just had a hard time understanding his letter. Thank you.
And as the department head of the registry, he has the right during the budget process to come in and fight for whatever lines he needs. So if the 30,000 was reduced originally and he didn't agree with it, he should have been before this board making the case for why he needed either additional funds or not to have that 30,000 cut in the first place.
Put it bluntly, I'm trying to figure out whether we're being played on this issue or whether there's just something I don't understand. And I guess it comes out in the middle somewhere. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, all right. I am ready to take a motion. Can you make a motion, Mr. Beckman?
Madam Chairman, I will make a motion to approve the second supplemental and transfer request in the amount of $1,117,276.92.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Little. All right, thank you, Sharon. I think we're ready for our vote. Barbara, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Any dis-
Hold on, Phil's gotta get his stuff ready.
Okay, I'm
Get
waiting for
everybody
Phil.
lined up here. I'm sorry, Peter,
this is the point for discussion, is that correct?
we can have more discussion at this point. Yes, we can.
Just one question. So that, what they're voting, what the suggestion is now, so I'm clear, is to cut the recommendation that the commissioners made with regard to the register of deeds. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the motion.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Are you ready, Phil?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Barbara, we're ready.
Okay, Avon,
Aye.
Bellingham,
Aye.
Braintree, Brookline,
Aye.
Canton, Cohasset, Dedham,
No.
Dover, Foxborough,
I abstain. I haven't had enough time to absorb all this number stuff.
okay.
But
Franklin,
I'll be ready to vote for any money the next time.
all right. Franklin,
No.
Holbrook, Medfield,
Aye.
Medway, Millis, Milton,
Aye.
Needham, Norfolk, Norwood, Plainville,
Yes.
Quincy,
Aye.
Randolph, Sharon,
Yes.
Stoughton,
Yes.
Walpole. Walpole? Okay. Wellesley votes yes. Westwood,
Aye.
Weymouth, Rentham. Rentham? Okay.
I have 51.64 yes, 7.10 no, and 2.04 abstaining.
Motion passes. We only need a majority vote for this, correct?
Well, 51% of the weighted vote is
It's
a majority. Yeah.
Yep. It's not just. Is it? Yeah, it's not broad. Okay. Yes, okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. We are on to the minutes. The executive session meeting of September 18th, 2024. You should have all gotten that via email.
Madam Chair, we
Oh.
did change the location. That was incorrect.
Oh.
On both this minutes and the.
Oh, thank you so much for doing that. Okay, yes, so we will note that we are voting on the minutes with the corrected meeting place. And the corrected meeting place is the Aggie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of, we're talking about the executive session? correct?
Yes, the executive session.
Executive session meeting minutes of September 18th, 2024.
Okay. Second,
Second.
thank you. We do have to do a roll call on this as well, I believe. Barbara?
Okay, Phil, you ready?
I will be ready in 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Avon,
Aye.
Bellingham,
Aye.
Braintree, Brookline,
Aye.
Canton, Cohasset, Dedham, Dover, Foxborough,
Abstain.
Franklin,
Yes.
Holbrook, Medfield,
Aye.
Medway, Millis, Milton,
Aye.
Needham, Norfolk, Norwood, Plainville,
Aye.
Quincy,
Aye.
Randolph, Sharon, Stoughton,
Aye.
Walpole.
Yes, and I apologize, my microphone wasn't working for the last vote, sorry.
Okay. Wellesley votes yes. Westwood,
Aye.
Weymouth, Rentham. Okay.
Yeah, 56.11 yes and 0 no and 7.84 abstaining.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. Okay, did we just do the?
Yep. Madam
We've done
Chair,
both of those, right?
Madam Chairman, I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the open session meeting of September 18th, 2024.
Okay, do you have a second for that?
Second,
Okay. Are you ready, Phil?
I'm gonna switch back to Excel. Switch back to that. And yes, all set.
Okay, all right, Barbara.
Avon,
Aye.
Bellingham,
Aye.
Braintree, Brookline,
Aye.
Canton, Cohasset, Dedham,
Abstain.
Dover, Foxborough,
Abstain.
Franklin,
Yes.
Holbrook, Medfield. Okay, Medway, Millis, Milton,
Yes.
Needham,
Medfield was an aye. I was on mute. Sorry.
okay. Needham, Norfolk, Norwood, Plainville,
Yes.
Quincy,
Aye.
Randolph, Sharon,
Abstain.
Stoughton,
Aye.
Walpole,
Aye.
Wellesley, votes yes. Westwood,
Aye.
Weymouth, and Rentham.
56.11 yes, no, 0 and 7.76 abstaining.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any emergency topics, but I realized I wanted to give Superintendent Martin a chance to speak to us about the school. Thank you for hosting us again. And there were several items that were capital items in the budget. You may want to mention that. And also, we just want to give you a chance to talk to us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First off, I would like to point to the bags at the back of the room. These are jade plants that were propagated by our plant science department. You are free to, welcome to take one with you on your way out of the building. The drought this spring and summer took a toll on our herb garden and our garlic crop. So we were not able to replicate the concoction we shared with you last year, which I was hoping to do. So the jade plants are homegrown, and so hopefully you will enjoy those. Thank you for passing supplemental budget tonight. We had to reprioritize some of our capital projects as a result of the HVAC shortage that we had encountered. So we're excited to move forward with some of those projects. Lastly, Chairman York has distributed a fact sheet to you. Hopefully at some point at a future meeting, we can spend some time talking about the data contained therein, as well as other things particular to the Aggie. And we'll be happy to get on an agenda at some point to review what the school does. Because I know a lot of you are intimately familiar with what we do, and some perhaps less so. So I'd like that opportunity at some point down the road.
That'd be great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, everybody should have this. Mr. Dumas.
I know I'm new tonight, and I'm surprised it hasn't already occurred, but I think a moment of silence in memory of Frank Bellotti would certainly be in order. He's certainly a great veteran, a great civic leader, and I know in the law profession, he influenced thousands of lawyers in a positive way. So if we could have a moment of silence for Frank, I appreciate that.
Let's do that. Okay, well, you stole my thunder because I was going to ask that when we adjourn in honor of Frank Bellotti, who died yesterday at 101, a son of Italian immigrants in Quincy. He was a World War II veteran, captain of a, what today would be called the Navy SEAL team of 54 men. He's the last living member of that team. He is quite a decorated veteran, ran for multiple offices, governor 3 times, and never gave up. And he served, as we know, as Attorney General and as Lieutenant Governor, and he is truly a son of Norfolk County. And we are so proud that his son, Mike, is the treasurer, and I hope we all will keep Mike in our prayers and our thoughts, and the whole family as they're going through this time. It's really quite something to lose somebody of his stature in our county, you know, who's really quite a son of Norfolk County. Well known to everybody in Quincy, I think. I don't know, Commissioner Shane still here? I don't know anybody in Quincy who doesn't know Frank Bellotti.
Everyone knows.
Everybody knows Frank Bellotti. So we are really pleased. So I just hope that when we adjourn in his honor. And I really, it's pretty cool to be in Norfolk County when you think about it. We're the county of presidents, and Quincy is the city of presidents. So it's quite something. Yeah. Any other items that we need to bring up before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Next meeting, April 16th.
Thank you. Our next meeting is April 16th. And I do not know if we will be permitted to have a hybrid option for that meeting. It is quite possible we will need to meet in person, but we will meet here, correct? Right, okay. April 16th, 2025. Okay? I think we need to do a roll call on this. I think we do.
No, not to.
We don't, we can do it by acclamation? All right, let's adjourn by acclamation. All right, aye. Aye, thank you all.